At 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a Ring doorbell alert. I was half asleep on the couch, so I grabbed my phone expecting nothing important. When I opened the app, I froze. The camera showed someone standing at my front door. The shock hit even harder when I realized the person outside looked exactly like me. Same hair, same jacket, same posture. I was inside watching a perfect copy of myself knocking on my own door. Then, the woman on the screen lifted her face toward the camera and spoke my daughter's name. My name is Kira Lorne. I am a mother who has lived with the pain of losing my daughter Hallie for 5 long years. My family is small, only my mom Ruth and my younger brother Evan, who still checks on me because he knows the nights are hard. I have never seen anything more terrifying than watching my own face say the name of the child I have been praying to find. The night started out quiet. I had spent the evening finishing a drawing job and then watched a show until I drifted off on the couch. My house sits in a calm neighborhood where people leave porch lights on and talk to each other across their lawns. It is not the kind of place where you expect strange things to happen. Ever since Hallie disappeared, I have tried to keep routines that make me feel grounded. I wake early, work from home, visit my mom every afternoon, and try to stay occupied so the memories do not pull me under. My brother Evan, who works as a police officer, had stopped by earlier with takeout. He usually leaves after checking the locks and making sure I am okay. That night felt like any other night. I fell asleep with the TV playing and the room dim. Nothing seemed out of place until the alert sounded on my phone. When I tapped the screen, the picture showed my front porch. The woman standing there wore my clothes and held herself exactly the way I do when I am cold. She knocked gently 3 times. I felt my body go rigid as I realized I was watching someone who should not exist. I sat up straight and stared at the screen, and when she looked into the camera, I felt a wave of fear hit my chest. Her lips moved, and I heard her say one clear word, Hallie. Hearing my missing daughter's name come from a stranger who looked like me shook me so deeply that I could barely breathe. If you are watching this, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from so I can welcome you. My hands shook so hard that I nearly dropped my phone as I stared at the woman on the screen who looked exactly like me. I felt trapped between disbelief and terror, unsure if I was awake or dreaming. My heart pounded as I stepped away from the couch and backed into the hallway, keeping my eyes on the live feed. The woman stood still for several seconds, then leaned closer to the door as if she was listening to something on the other side. I took slow breaths and whispered to myself that it had to be a malfunction or a glitch. But the more I watched, the less sense it made. The woman's movements matched the way I moved when I was tired after a long day. Her fingers tapped the railing the exact way I did when I was thinking. There was no way the camera had created that level of detail. I forced myself to check the front window to confirm what the feed was showing. When I peeked out, the porch was completely empty. I looked back at my phone, and the woman was still standing there. The confusion hit me so hard that my legs felt weak. I whispered, "This is not possible." As my throat tightened, I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to slow my breathing enough to think clearly. The woman on the screen slowly turned her head toward the Ring camera again and said my daughter's name a second time in a steady, quiet voice. Hearing it repeated made the fear inside me grow sharper. I stepped back and covered my mouth, struggling to hold myself together. I tapped the screen to replay the last 10 seconds, hoping the audio would make more sense the second time. The voice sounded exactly like mine. Same tone, same pitch, same soft rasp I get when I have been up too late. I felt as if something cold had wrapped itself around my spine. I needed help. I grabbed my phone and called my brother Evan. He answered, sounding half awake, but the second he heard my voice, he asked what was wrong. I told him exactly what I was seeing, my words stumbling over each other as I tried to explain that someone who looked like me was outside my door. Evan's voice shifted immediately into the firm, focused tone he used at work. He told me to stay away from the windows, stay inside, and lock every door. I checked the front door's deadbolt even though I already knew it was locked. The doorbell chimed again, but when I checked the live feed, the woman was gone. The porch was clear. The cold fear inside me only grew stronger. People do not vanish without moving out of camera view. I stared at the screen, trying to figure out where she could have gone. The motion alert triggered again, and I almost dropped my phone. When the video loaded, the woman was standing at the bottom of my front steps facing the street. The camera caught only her back, but I recognized that jacket and the way her shoulders curled forward. She took one slow step toward the road and paused as if she was waiting for something. I pressed my hand against the window again, but the yard was empty. I felt dizzy trying to understand how the camera could show someone who was not physically there. I whispered to myself, "This feels wrong," and I knew something more disturbing was happening than a simple glitch. When Evan arrived minutes later, he came in fast and checked every room with his flashlight. Even though I told him I had been inside and alone the entire time, he walked to the front window and checked the porch. Nothing. When I showed him the footage, he narrowed his eyes and replayed it several times. He said the same thing he had said before, that someone must have edited the video or hacked the feed. I shook my head and told him I watched the woman live. I watched her move. I watched her speak. The more I insisted, the more worried he looked for my safety and my mental state, which made me feel even more lost. I replayed the clip again, this time raising the volume. When the woman said my daughter's name, a faint sound followed behind it, like a child humming a soft tune. The melody was slow and familiar. It was the lullaby I used to sing to Hallie before bed. Hearing that small voice in the background pushed the fear inside me into something deeper, something sharper, something that made my hands turn cold. I knew then that the woman outside was not trying to scare me. She was trying to bring my attention to something connected to my daughter, and that knowledge terrified me more than anything else. Evan stood beside me, his jaw tight as he replayed the footage again, but I could tell he was trying to stay rational for my sake. His training pushed him toward logical explanations, but nothing about what we saw felt logical. I kept my arms wrapped around myself as I tried to steady my breathing. Every instinct inside me told me that the video was not a trick, and that the woman on the screen had meant something specific by calling my daughter's name. I said to Evan, "I need to understand what this means. There is a reason she said Hallie's name. I cannot ignore that." He took a slow breath and shook his head, telling me that I was too emotional to think clearly, but I could see a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He could not explain the faint humming in the footage either. The sound had rattled him. I walked over to the table where my laptop sat and opened the Ring app on a larger screen. Seeing the footage on a bigger display only made it more unsettling. I paused the video at the exact moment the woman leaned toward the camera. Her face looked identical to mine, except for the eyes. Mine were warm brown. Hers appeared darker, almost shadowed, as if something inside them did not belong to me. I moved the video frame by frame until something caught my attention. Behind the woman's shoulder, out by the street, a small figure stood near the curb. The shape was faint, almost swallowed by the night, but the height and outline looked like a young child. My chest tightened as I leaned closer to the screen. The small figure had a posture I recognized, the way one shoulder tilted slightly inward. I whispered, "Evan, look." He leaned over me and stared at the screen. He stiffened when he saw it. He immediately said it could be a shadow or a distorted image, but his voice cracked slightly, betraying his confidence. The childlike shape was too clear to ignore. I stood up quickly, feeling something inside me shift. I knew I had two choices: stay inside, hiding from something I did not understand, or follow the only lead I had seen in 5 years. I grabbed my coat, and Evan immediately tried to stop me, reminding me it was after 3 in the morning and dark outside. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "If there is even the smallest chance that this has anything to do with Hallie, I am not staying here." Evan realized I was not going to be talked out of it. He grabbed his keys and told me he would drive. We stepped outside together, and the cold from the night hit my skin sharply. The yard was silent, and the street looked empty, but my nerves were on fire. We walked around the porch and down the steps, scanning every corner of the yard. Evan's flashlight swept across the driveway, the walkway, and the bushes near the house. Just when I started to think the trail was gone, Evan stopped and pointed at the dirt area near the side gate. Small footprints, too small to belong to an adult, pressed into the soft ground. My breath caught in my throat. The tracks led toward the back of the neighborhood, where a line of trees bordered the houses. I knelt down, touching one of the prints with my fingers. The size matched what would have been Hallie's feet at her age when she disappeared. My voice shook as I said, "These are fresh." Evan swallowed hard and told me not to jump to conclusions, but he could not deny the evidence. The tracks continued into the wooded area, and I felt pulled toward them as if something deep inside me was guiding my steps. Evan kept close behind me, reminding me to stay near him, but I moved faster than he expected. Every sound in the woods made my heart jump, but I listened carefully for anything that might resemble the humming we heard in the recording. After several minutes of walking through the dark trees, we both stopped at the same moment. A faint sound drifted through the woods, soft and delicate, like a child humming a familiar lullaby. My breath tightened. It was the exact tune I used to sing to Hallie every night. I moved toward the sound without thinking, calling her name gently. Evan reached for my arm, telling me to slow down and think, but the humming grew clearer, pulling me forward. When I stepped into a small clearing near an old abandoned shed, the humming stopped. The space fell silent, and the cold air stilled. That was when I saw a small shape standing near the corner of the shed. The figure was the size of a child, facing away from me, with long hair and a white dress moving slightly in the breeze. My heart raced as I whispered, "Hallie," hoping with everything inside me that she would turn around. My voice shook as I whispered my daughter's name into the cold night air, and the small figure near the shed slowly turned toward me. The flashlight beam caught her face just enough for me to recognize the features I had memorized from old photos. Her eyes were the same soft brown, her cheeks round in the way they had always been, and her hair fell over her shoulders like it did when she was 8. My breath caught so sharply that my chest hurt. It felt impossible to believe she was real and standing in front of me after 5 empty years. Yet she stared at me with a mixture of fear and longing that made the world around me fade. I took one careful step toward her, afraid she would disappear if I moved too fast. She stepped back as if she did not trust her own eyes. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Mom, you are not supposed to be here." Hearing her call me that again hit me so hard that tears filled my eyes instantly. I reached out my hand, but before I could come any closer, a sound behind the shed made both of us tense. Evan raised his flashlight, and the beam swept across the trees until it stopped on a figure stepping out from behind the shed. My stomach twisted into a knot when I saw her. It was the woman from my doorbell camera, the one with my face. She looked the same as she had in the footage, down to my jacket and the loose braid in her hair. But up close, her expression was empty in a way that made my skin crawl. Her smile did not reach her eyes. Her eyes did not look human. They looked like something pretending to understand how humans move and speak. Hallie grabbed my sleeve and pulled me closer to her, shaking as she said, "She told me she was you. She said she could keep me safe if I listened." My heart broke, hearing the fear in her voice. I kept my arm around her tightly, trying to steady her, trying to steady myself. Evan stepped in front of us with his hand raised toward the woman, telling her to stop where she was. The woman tilted her head in an unnatural way, then stepped forward with slow, measured steps, as if she was mimicking human behavior. Her voice sounded just like mine when she said, "Kira, you should not have come here. I was keeping her safe." The sound of my own voice coming from her made my stomach turn. I shouted at her to stay back, but she kept walking. She lifted her hand toward us, palm open, and repeated Hallie's name with a strange calmness. Hallie buried her face against my side and whispered, "She wanted to take your place." The meaning of those words hit me hard. The woman took one more step, and the flashlight beam caught her face at an angle that made her features ripple, as if something underneath her skin was shifting. Evan shouted for her to stop again, his voice strong and grounded, but she did not react to him. She seemed fixated on me and Hallie, drawn like a magnet. Evan shined the flashlight directly into her eyes, and something sharp and wrong flickered across her face. Her skin seemed to twitch, and she stumbled back as if the light hurt her. She let out a low, broken sound that made the hairs on my arms rise. The light exposed something beneath her outer layer, something that did not look like skin at all. She backed away from the beam, shielding her face. Evan stepped closer with the flashlight raised higher. She retreated quickly, her movements growing unstable, almost jerking, like she was losing the ability to hold her form. She turned and ran into the trees with a speed that did not look natural, vanishing deeper into the woods until she disappeared completely. The moment she was gone, I dropped to my knees and pulled Hallie into my arms. She clung to me with both arms around my neck, sobbing in a way that broke every remaining piece of my heart. I held her as tightly as I could, afraid that if I let go, she would slip away again. Evan knelt beside us, with his flashlight pointed toward the trees, scanning for any sign of the creature. The woods were silent. Hallie trembled as she told me that the woman kept her in the woods, always watching the people in the neighborhood, copying their voices and faces. She said the woman watched me for a long time and told her she wanted to become me completely. I felt sick hearing it, sick with fear and with the guilt of not finding her sooner. I promised her over and over that she was safe now. The three of us stayed there until Evan was certain the creature was gone. When we finally walked out of the woods with Hallie held tightly in my arms, I felt the weight of 5 years lift and crash down at the same time. My daughter was alive, terrified, and back in my arms, and I knew that whatever waited in those woods was something none of us were prepared to understand. The hours that followed felt both painfully slow and overwhelming as we waited for the police to arrive at the edge of the woods. I held Hallie close the entire time, afraid to loosen even the smallest part of my grip. Every few minutes I pressed my cheek against her head just to reassure myself she was really there. When the officers reached us, they guided us back to the house and immediately called in search teams to sweep the woods. They told us to stay inside, lock every door, and keep lights on until they could secure the area. Inside the house, Hallie moved hesitantly, as if normal spaces felt strange after years of being kept outside the world she once knew. She clung to my shirt as we walked from the living room to the kitchen, and when she saw the family photos on the wall, she stopped and stared at them with wide eyes. Her small hand lifted and touched the frame that held her school picture from the year she disappeared. She whispered, "I didn't think I would ever see this again." Hearing her say that hit me so hard that I had to turn away for a moment to keep my composure. Evan stayed with us, checking windows and doors every few minutes, even though the police were outside. He kept glancing at Hallie, studying her expressions, listening closely to her quiet voice whenever she answered a question. I could tell he was trying to piece together everything she hinted at, but did not yet have the strength to explain. Eventually, the officers asked us to sit at the kitchen table so they could talk to Hallie gently about where she had been. They spoke with calming voices, careful not to overwhelm her. She told them that the woman came to her years ago, speaking with my voice, calling her name from outside her window. The woman told her she needed to keep her safe because someone was coming for her. Hallie said she followed her deep into the woods because she was scared and confused, and once she realized something was wrong, it was too late to turn back. The creature kept her near the shed and visited her often, copying people it watched in the neighborhood. The officers exchanged quiet, tense looks, clearly unsure how to categorize what they were hearing, but they continued to listen closely. When they asked Hallie how she survived all this time, she said the creature left food near the shed, but never let her leave the woods. She lived in fear every day, waiting for a chance to run, but the creature always came back before she could. Hearing those words made my stomach twist with guilt and heartbreak, and I reached for her hand, promising her she would never be alone again. The search teams returned hours later, reporting that they found signs of movement, but no trace of the woman. They found strange impressions in the dirt, unnatural tracks, and remnants of makeshift shelter near the shed. Everything pointed to something that moved quickly and avoided light. The officers said they would continue investigating, but they could not give us clear answers. In the following days, doctors examined Hallie and confirmed she was physically healthy. She needed rest, care, and time to process the trauma she endured. My mother crying when she saw her was one of the most emotional moments of my life. She dropped to her knees and held Hallie like a grandmother, who had just been given a second chance at a life she thought was stolen from her. Hallie stayed close to me, watching every corner of every room as if expecting the creature to appear again. I spent each night on her bedroom floor, holding her hand, telling her she was safe, and reminding myself that she was truly home. The police continued to monitor the woods, but the creature never returned. Some neighbors talked about strange sounds or shadows in the days before Hallie's return, but nothing concrete came from it. Life slowly found a new rhythm. Hallie started eating normally again, sleeping more peacefully, and speaking with more confidence. I kept the ring footage, but I locked it away because I did not want her to relive the night that revealed the creature wearing my face. I knew I would never fully understand what it was or how it learned to imitate me so perfectly. What I did understand was something far more important. My daughter had survived something unimaginable, and now she was back where she belonged. I spent 5 years wondering what happened to her, and waking up each day hoping for one more chance to hold her. I never expected the thing that brought her home to be something pretending to be me, but I am grateful that whatever its intention was, it led us to the woods at the exact moment Hallie needed us most. Life is different now, but it is fuller, brighter, and anchored by the love I fought to keep alive. And every night when I tuck Hallie into bed, I whisper a promise to her that she will never be taken from me again. If you made it to the end of this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from so I can say hello to you personally.